we are in a sort of precarious point where we've reached a stable equilibrium, I would say, but precariously so. Um, we've got the economy slowing a bit. Which I think would put all else equal pressure on the fiscal situation from the receipt side. Uh, Asset prices are pretty much at all-time highs. That's helping things, all else equal. We've got, the geopolitical and trade situation in a state of flux. I think there is a dawning recognition. I think we've moved from the denial stage of grief, if you will, regarding U.S. and China relative trade leverage levels. And actually, Russia and NATO relative leverage levels in Ukraine. I think we've moved on from denial, probably somewhere between the anger and bargaining stages. There seems to be this sort of bargaining stage of grief, in particular as it relates to the China trade initiatives that, we've misallocated capital for 20 or 30 years, and we've redirected labor into finance instead of engineering and skilled trades for 20 or 30 years. And somehow through hard work and magical thinking, we're going to be able to sort of rebuild that and unwind those mistakes with a minimum of disruption and pain in 1 to 2 years. And I think that is overly optimistic, to put it mildly and kindly. And then you've got this AI overlay within all of this, which is is fundamentally incompatible with our debt-based monetary system, right? We just had, last week we had a New York Times article that was an internal leaked Amazon document, but they weren't going to hire 160,000 workers they would have otherwise hired because of robots. They think that number will be 600,000 by 2033. This is the second biggest private employer in the U.S., arguably one of the most efficient companies in the U.S., arguably de facto subsidized by the U.S. government through government Amazon Web Services contracts, and yet this is what they're doing. And all of those people presumably have consumer loans outstanding as they get laid off. They all have mortgages of some description or are renting in apartments who will see vacancy rates rise, whose landlords tend to be levered borrowers in commercial real estate. And so what is right now being still espoused as a productivity miracle in AI, people are, in my opinion, right tail translating or sort of smoothing over all of the productivity gains without giving really any thought or appropriate weight, at least, to the disruptiveness of that productivity. So it's a pretty tricky moment in time, where, like I said, I think we have a momentary equilibrium, but a lot of things working to destabilize that equilibrium.
So you mentioned that we have sort of a demographic problem. We have a situation in the US where we don't really have the skilled workforce that we've had in the past. But then you mentioned AI, which is then being more efficient and potentially disrupting the labor force. But couldn't that also help the labor force, right? So we do have an aging demographic and we don't have as many skilled workers. And so how do we move forward in that environment? It could be dangerous. But can't AI come in and help with that efficiency?
If it does so at exactly the right pace and in exactly the right areas, yes, it could be sort of a miracle solution. The challenge, is that in multiple ways there's mismatches, right? So we don't have the grid to do what we want to do in AI per se in certain areas. So that's an issue, and we're short or will be short some of the skilled trades we need there. In theory, robots can do some of that at some point, but then you get into the as it displaces labor. If it does it too quickly, it starts to touch off a consumer credit and banking system problem where people who see their wages fall or lose their jobs because of this, they don't pay their mortgages on time, they don't pay their car loans on time, etc. That creates a credit problem, and banks have reserved treasuries per regulatory mandate as their liquid capital to sell, to paper over losses if this, whenever this gets out of hand. And one of the things I've seen in the last month or so that's a little disconcerting on this front has been a Wall Street Journal article noting that unemployment rates amongst 20 to 24-year-olds with bachelor's degrees is up to 7%. They would be the first place you'd see this because, AI is, sort of Yep. And that's who it displaces first. Are your least experienced, sort of accredited workers, right? Degreed workers.
Right.
And you're starting to see it. And if you applied a 7% unemployment rate to across this economy, like kaboom, it doesn't work with those numbers, let alone 8%, 10%, or, heaven forbid, we had a productivity miracle when China came into the WTO, and we lost a third of manufacturing workers in this country in about 4 or 5 years. If something like that happened across certain white collar sectors, Katie bar the door. And that's why I say it's fundamentally incompatible if it arrives too quickly, and it appears to be arriving too quickly.
So it's more of a displacement issue. When you look back through all the technological revolutions of the last couple 100 years, each one does get rid of a lot of jobs, but then it creates more jobs than have been lost. Things don't operate in a vacuum. So all of a sudden it creates more demand in areas we didn't know about, but there's that bubble, that displacement bubble we have to get through. But it looks like something you've talked about quite extensively is what happened in the Rust Belt, right? So with China coming into the WTO and all the jobs going over there to China, that sort of hollowed out that industrial base, in the Rust Belt in Middle America. I would say, like, one, I think that happened. Number two, though, we went from an industrial era to an information age, right? And so we went from assembly lines to now working on IT, information systems, et cetera. Isn't it sort of part of like a society as it advances to sort of get rid of the lower level tasks, picking cotton in the field, making textiles, for example, and then maybe even manufacturers to keep moving to the higher level things? So was it more, I guess, was it both of those? To me, it sort of seems like it was technology that disrupted those middle America workers more than wanting to offshore them because of the dollar, the need to offshore dollars.
Yeah, I think that kind of thing has happened, and it is, when I look back to, say, prior technology booms, right? So go back to the late 1800s. We had railroads, and we had cars, and you had the discovery and commercialization of oil and fossil fuels, and then you come into 1914, and you have 4 major empires, and by 1918, 3 of the 4 are gone and dead, and one of them's mortally wounded, and has basically ceded its reserve status to America in the aftermath of it. And so it's not to say this kind of thing hasn't happened before. It certainly has. And when you look at, say, okay, this conversation with somebody the other day, and they said, look, they called up Grok. Hey, Grok, what was sort of the boom associated with that? And I said, well, hey, I replied by saying, hey, Grok, what percentage of the human population in the world in 1913 was killed in wars and political revolutions due to the fast pace of socioeconomic change from 1914 and 1945? And Grok said about 100 million people, and that was equivalent to roughly 5 to 6% of the population alive in 1913. And what I didn't then ask Grok is say, hey, what percentage of that was of Eurasia, since most of those deaths were in Eurasia? And
Right.
it's probably closer to 10 to 12%, right? So it's one of these things where, yes, over time, these technological shifts inevitably move human progress, intelligence, etc., higher. The challenge is, A, it's nonlinear, and B, we've never done it with debt to GDP in post-war levels. It's all, we've always been at pre-war levels. So we're at post-war levels of debt to GDP. And the other thing we have is that we're at the end of a 150-year experiment / Ponzi scheme with Western social entitlements is blowing up. Right? It's, if you went and said to the average investor, and as you know, we wrote about this last week, was when you're in a Ponzi scheme and people start taking more money out than are putting money in, 100% of those Ponzi schemes have blown up. And that's what's happening in Western social entitlements, and has been for 10 years. And there's like this magical thinking that, well, this won't blow up. Like, everyone knows it'll blow up, but everyone's sort of hoping it'll blow up on someone else's watch. And the reality is that as fast as it's blowing up, AI is going to make it blow up way faster. Like, it will, they think it's going to run out in 2031 or 2032, one of the funds. AI, well, what if AI makes it 2028, 2029? Then what? And to me, it's ultimately all about, well, the Fed's going to have to backstop it. They're going to have to more fully reserve all this debt because ultimately their mandate is backstop the banks, and this will take the banks down.
Hey, if you like this short conversation I just had, you're going to love the full-length conversation. Don't miss it. You can go ahead and click right over here, and I'll see you over there.